Barcelona is one of Europe's most beautiful cities, and what better way to see it than through the eyes of an architect? I'll take you on a tour of Barcelona's architecture, neighborhoods, and we'll even touch on the cuisine, because no travel destination is complete without food. I spent 9 days in Barcelona in March and April of 2022, and I also spent a few days there while I was in college back in March of 2013. Spring is a great time to go to Spain and Southern Europe for a number of reasons. It's just the start of tourist season, so attractions and restaurants aren't totally packed yet. The weather is perfect, with the temperature hovering right around 70 degrees most of the day and dipping into the 60s and 50s at night. You won't experience any bad smell throughout the city that's often reported as it gets hotter during the summer. I won't bury the lead here. La Sagrada Familia is the #1 must-see attraction in the city. Originally designed by Francisco de Paula del Villar in 1882 and later taken over by Antoni Gaudí in 1883 in the first year of construction, the basilica is inspired by Byzantine and Gothic architecture, but Gaudí ultimately created a new architectural style with this building. The advanced application of geometry allowed for shapes that had never before been seen in a building. The church has 18 towers, with the tallest 6 soaring above the center of the building. Each of these towers is topped with a classic geometrical shape, like spheres, pyramids, and octahedrons. Unlike so many other churches of the time, the interior of La Sagrada Familia is filled with light that filters through the beautiful stained glass, creating a colorful environment that is much more celebratory than somber. Gaudí elected to build the temple in parts because he believed it would be more difficult to abandon the project early on if an entire section was completed. It was originally scheduled to be completed in 2026, but has since been delayed due to the pandemic with no firm end date. Another Gaudí project, Parc Güell spans 42 acres on the north side of Barcelona in the Gràcia neighborhood. This UNESCO World Heritage Site was originally designed as a housing complex for Barcelona aristocrats. Once the project failed, it was turned into the garden that it is today. The park is full of bright, colorful mosaic tiles in a style called trencadís that Gaudí pioneered during the design of this project. You'll find a lot of walking paths and viewpoints among nature. Some of the biggest attractions in the park include Portic de la Bugadera, which is the wave-shaped stone tunnel, the Greek Theater, with the extensive mosaic tile seating in front of the most sought-after viewpoint, Sala Hypostila, or Hypostyle Room, where you'll find the iconic monumental stairs leading up to the Colonnade Hall, and finally, El Drac, which is technically a dragon, but you'll more commonly hear it referred to as the lizard. This is probably the most popular attraction in the park, and you'll likely be waiting in line to get a photo with it. Let's jump to the southern side of the city, where you'll find La Rambla, a large walking avenue splitting the Gothic Quarter and El Raval neighborhoods. The street starts at Plaça de Catalunya and runs all the way to the water, about 0.8 miles. La Rambla will give you access to a ton of great architecture. Let's go through it. The neighborhood spanning along the eastern side of La Rambla, the Gothic Quarter is a historical walled Roman settlement that made up the original bounds of Barcelona and is now the oldest and most popular neighborhood among tourists. Here you'll find narrow, winding medieval streets with restaurants and shops tucked in around every corner, making this a great place to wander around and get lost. The most dramatic piece of architecture in the Gothic Quarter is the Barcelona Cathedral. This is one of the most stunning churches in Barcelona outside of La Sagrada Familia. It was designed in the Gothic and Gothic Revival styles by Josep Oriol Mestres and August Font y Carreras, and was built from 1298 to 1448. There's a lot to explore in this church. I spent about an hour in here and could easily have stayed longer. Don't miss taking the elevator up to the roof, where you'll get an excellent view of one of the spires, the surrounding Gothic Quarter, and the Montjuïc Communications Tower. The cloister provides some excellent lighting and shadows in the late afternoons, and gives you a chance to get up close and personal with the resident ducks. Other attractions in the Gothic Quarter include Placa Nova, where you can see one of the 4 original entrances to the Roman city, along with the Barcino sculpture, and Pont del Bisbe, the famous bridge that everyone takes photos under. My wife and I actually hired a travel photographer and did a short photo shoot in the Gothic Quarter as well as Elborn, and it was a great way to experience a bunch of different neighborhoods. It was especially helpful having a knowledgeable local with us who knew all of the must-see spots. Arguably my favorite spot on La Rambla is the Mercado de la Boqueria. It's a massive indoor public market serving produce, meat, fresh fish, snacks, jamon, and plenty of fresh squeezed juices. The market dates back to 1217, with the most recent construction coming in the form of the metal roof in 1914. Moving north to the L'Eixample neighborhood, we'll find another example of Gaudí's astonishing design in Casa Milà. Originally designed in the Modernista style as a private residence, the building now serves as a museum open to the public. Built between 1906 and 1912, it was declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1984, the second one I've mentioned today. This building is a must-see, if not just for the roof access. You'll be able to walk right up to the mosaic-covered twisting tower structures that disguise the stairwells, ventilation shafts, and chimneys as you traverse the undulating roofscape, with views down into the central courtyards. One of the most fascinating details about this building is that the stone facade is not structural, with the masonry connected back to the structure by metal components. Make sure not to miss the wrought iron detail work on the balconies. Scrap iron sheets, bars, and chains were combined to make beautiful sculptural railings. If you're in town when FC Barcelona has a home game, hit up Camp Nou to catch a game. The stadium opened in 1957 and has a capacity of just under 100,000. Lionel Messi no longer plays there, but it's still worth a stop. Still in Barcelona proper, we can head up the mountain to Tibidabo. In less than an hour train ride, you'll arrive at the Roman Catholic Temple of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. It was designed by Enric Sagniera and built from 1902 to 1961. The church is comprised of 3 parts: the lower crypt, the upper church, and the rooftop. The most impressive part of the interior is the imposing octagonal dome in the upper church. But what you're really here to do is climb the multiple sets of spiral staircases to get up to the highest rooftop for an expansive view of Barcelona. Be warned, it'll be windy. Let's take a look at a few neighborhoods as a whole. Just east of the Gothic Quarter is El Born, one of the oldest and most interesting neighborhoods in Barcelona. Similar to the Gothic Quarter, you'll find tiny, winding streets. The difference is that El Born is less touristy, and you'll get that classic European feel. Graffitied walls, murals, plants, lots of cables and strings crossing overhead with clothes drying, lights, etc. The largest church in the neighborhood is the Basilica of Santa Maria del Mar. It's a Catalan Gothic church built in the 14th century. It's very difficult to get an overall view of the church from the outside since the streets are so tight, but once you enter, the interior is very tall and spacious, quite the difference from the exterior. Immediately east of El Born, you'll find Parc De La Ciutadella, a park spanning 77 acres that includes numerous structures, a lake, and the zoo. One of those structures is the Cascada del Parc de la Ciutadella, a series of stairs and cascading waterfalls that was designed by Antoni Gaudí, among others. This is a great spot for people watching. You can often find groups of people dancing or doing workouts at the top. Just outside the eastern walls of the park, there's a quiet tree-lined street with some old train tracks where you can find a few really interesting facades of Pompeu Fabra University. If you exit the park at the northwest corner, you'll enter the Promenade Passeig de Lluís Companys. It's a touristy walking path full of street performers, but you do get to see the Arc de Triomphe at the end of the promenade. Nestled between the park and the Mediterranean is a tiny neighborhood of La Barceloneta. Here you'll find incredibly narrow streets and charming local squares. The urban planning here is very unique compared to the rest of Barcelona. The streets are laid out in a long linear grid with small intersections, while the majority of Barcelona utilizes square blocks with large octagonal intersections. A few places that are worth a stop. The Port Vell food market lines the west side of the neighborhood along the port, and they serve everything from local honey to hot empanadas. It's only open on Sundays, so make sure you plan your trip accordingly. There's a large walking path along the Mediterranean on the east side, and isn't the beach what everyone comes for anyway? At the end of the path is El Peixe, designed by Frank Gehry. It's a giant metal abstract fish sculpture. It's pretty cool to see up close, but definitely a little weird. Just before you get to the fish, you can spot the Center for Genomic Regulation. It's not a place that you'll go into, but it's just an oval building that has a really awesome wood screen facade. The last neighborhood I'm going to mention is El Poble-Sec, a compact district at the southwest corner of Barcelona that's comprised mostly of a large hill. There are a lot of things to see here, and if you're up for doing a lot of walking, this could all be done back to back in a single day. First up is Castell De Montjuïc, an old military fortress at the top of Montjuïc Hill. Depending on the season and the day of the week, you can take a series of cable cars to the top of the hill. Unfortunately, on the day we went, they were doing some scheduled maintenance and we had to walk up the entire hill. And it's steep! The castle dates back to 1640, but the structure that stands today was constructed in 1800 after the original fortress was demolished. It now operates as a museum and allows you to walk around its multiple levels, providing some panoramic views of Barcelona and its ports. About a 25-minute walk from Castell De Montjuïc are the Greek Theatre and Gardens. Designed by Ramon Reventos Ferreron, the outdoor stone amphitheater opened in 1929 and has a beautiful natural stone backdrop. You can routinely catch a variety of entertainment, including live theater, dance, and musical performances. The gardens are immediately adjacent, spanning an area of 4 acres. A short 15-minute walk from the Greek Theatre will get you to the Botanical Gardens, a 34-acre series of triangulated walkways that's home to over 1,300 species of plants from 5 different locations across the world that have a Mediterranean climate. There's a lot to see here, so make sure you allot your time accordingly. Just across the street from the gardens, you'll find the Olympic Park. If you're lucky, it'll all be unlocked and open for you to explore. The Lluís Companys Olympic Stadium is a cool sight to see. This was home to the 1992 Olympics and the 1929 International Exposition. The stadium hasn't been used for much in the past decade, but FC Barcelona will be playing its 2023-2024 season here while Camp Nou undergoes renovations. The Olympic Ring is one of the most picturesque locations in all of Barcelona. You have the cascading fountains, the green lawns, the towering yellow columns that serve to light the ring at night, the mountains as a backdrop, and of course, the communications tower designed by Santiago Calatrava in the foreground. It's a great place to spend a bit of time and a great place to take kids. There's plenty of space for them to run around and get misted by the fountains. After one final 15-minute walk, you'll arrive at the beautiful Spanish Renaissance-styled Montjuïc National Palace, designed by Eugenio Candoya and Enrique Cata. Fronting the palace is a series of cascading fountains and staircases, all eventually terminating at Plaza de España. This is an excellent spot for a photo, and you can typically expect to hear a local artist playing music on the terraces out front. Last but certainly not least, take a walk down the stairs and you'll find the Barcelona Pavilion, widely regarded as one of the masterpieces of modern architecture. Designed by Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, it was commissioned as the German pavilion for the 1929 International Exposition. The concept blurs the line between interior and exterior, using cruciform steel columns to allow for a free-flowing plan and expansive glazing. This concept is enforced by the continuous travertine flooring that stretches outside to form the reflection pools. The structure is bare, save for some custom furniture, and is an exercise in simplicity. The only materials you'll find are travertine, chrome columns, glazing, and pops of marble and red onyx. Seeing this building is something of a pilgrimage for most architects. Because of that, you'll routinely see large groups full of architecture students touring the building. If you see one of those groups, my advice is to wait outside until they leave so you can truly experience this work of art. Regardless what lens you're looking at a city through, I think food is a crucial part. Food and drink can tell you so much about a culture, and let's be honest, food is the main reason we all travel. Tapas consist of small plates of food that are most often shared. They can be consumed all at one restaurant, although people will often hop from bar to bar and get a few tapas at each place. Vermut, or vermouth, is a fortified wine steeped in botanicals. In Spain, it's typically served in a small glass over ice with an orange slice, and is usually consumed during La Hora del Vermut, or the hour of vermouth, which is just before lunch around 1:30 p.m. One of the best places we had tapas at was Cerveceria Catalana. Some classic tapas that you can't miss are patatas bravas, which are fried potatoes with alioli and a spicy red sauce that is never really very spicy, fried artichokes, our tortilla, which is an egg and potato omelet, padron peppers, which are just lightly fried and tossed in oil and flaky salt, jamon croquettes, and my favorite dessert, bread, chocolate, oil, and salt. Let's talk about a few restaurants to highlight. Blavis is a Spanish restaurant with Japanese and Italian influence located in the El Faro neighborhood. You can expect impeccable service in a very welcoming, intimate environment. Everything on the menu is delicious. Salmon tataki, beef tartare, and the vegetable curry were some of the highlights, along with the tortillas and matcha panna cotta for dessert. Iakni is a Lebanese restaurant in the Sant Antoni neighborhood. Like Blavis, the service was superb. Our server went through the entire menu with us and recommended some amazing wine pairings. Some dishes to highlight were the fattoush, tabbouleh, and chicken shawarma. Parallelo Gelato is my favorite gelato of all time, and I spent 4 months living in Rome. Masala chai, black sesame, and goat cheese with dates and pine nuts were some of the most unique and delicious gelato flavors that we had. That's all for this Architect's Guide to Barcelona. If you like what you saw, or if there's something that I missed that you think everyone needs to see, let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe because there are some amazing cities coming up in the near future.